Hello, everybody. Denise here. This is our Red Program 140 translation video. I am going to be using the transcript for the program as a guide, and hopefully we'll be able to get through it. If not, I'll just make two parts of the video because it is a little bit long. This video was recorded on the 12th of July, which is the first day of lab 13. So Red Program 140 corresponds to lab 13 of 2025, which is lab 2 in relation to others, right? Okay, so lab 2 has to do with the functioning of the other. We're going to be coupling these new characteristics because for us, every person that went through the first 11 labs has a new pattern or has new patterns. So picking up these patterns and updating that functioning, that's what this lab 13 has to do. That is like the main theme of this lab 13. So to 13, we always call 13 the question, because it is what is going to provide us with the bisagra de percepción. Bisagra is, so I had to look up that word bisagra. Bisagra is hinge, like what we use on the doors to open and close, right? So she says, it is what's going to provide us with the perceptual hinge, and it's going to route us towards a determined perception. We're going to be stimulating the question, and that is because there is an answer on the way. We're going to be stimulating a question because there's an answer on the way. So this way, the question kind of like provokes the flow. It provokes the flow. We open the question and there's an answer on the way. On the day when the program was recorded, we had on the global quarantine mark 4654 days, right? So from the right, we have 456, which is the design of the truth, which is the middle of the calculator, the middle line of the calculator. And that is the design of the truth that's going to be operating in the flow of signals. And that is going to cause great separation between ones and others, because there's going to be a specific frequency in each person. A new question installing itself in a new frequency. So that new frequency is going to become very evident, okay? That's why she says separation between ones and others, because each person is going to have a specific frequency installing. Earlier she said about the picking up new patterns and updating that functioning, right? So that has to do with that. And also in the sum of the total of the LGC calendar, we have 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, right? So we have, again, 4, 5, 6, and we have 13 containing that. So that is the 13 that is beginning now, lab 13, and that is in like full self-challenge, because it has to do with our own construction. Each one is their own construction, and one cannot go out of range. One cannot go into an area that is not your own area or your own level. And this is very determining because the update is determined by the frames. So this prepares us in a very absolute way to transit what would be the new construction of the octave, which is the month of August. And she says, I am talking socially because we're talking about the month, right? And this has to do with a revolution of changes that are going to be given. Of course, logically, Why? Because the unified field begins to become regulated by the solar code. And the solar code is going to have the characteristic of improving the quality of the interactions. So for the quality of the interactions to improve, we will have this 456 lining, right? And this is going to be determining affinities, right? So what's going to happen? There's going to be a reunion through affinities, a reunion under the same arch of question and answer, which is going to be what's going to be providing the format to this change, this global change that is going to be very heterogeneous. There's going to be all kinds of natures in our interactions, but there's going to be a certain reunion or acquaintance under the same arch of question and answer. But we in LGC have this luxury to be able to observe the skeleton of this construction. But once this is set, this is turned on or this is put on the road, each one is going to have to be connected forcefully with whomever has their own parameters, right? So, in the LGC calendar on that day, when we look at line 2020, it had line 2020, okay? So we could see that value there as well. What is this telling us? It's telling us that we are going to be put as equals, which means the lateralization has begun to function. We are picking up, we are functioning, we are sharing perspectives, destiny. Okay, all of these things that are going to be taking us towards the end of the year. Because another thing is that this is an Asume year that is the 8th year since 2017, which is when Calendaria began. So what was it that we were recreating in that matrix of 2017 with Calendaria? What was that? The capacity of changing the patterns to consume the space. What were what was it that we were recreating in 2017? The capacity to change the patterns through which we consume space. So when we put 8 years on top of that, the field gets regulated. If we have been working on reasoning layer by layer, we are going to be able to see with a lot of details all of these things. But for the people who have been all of this time at a symbolic scale, all of this is not going to be very clear. It's going to be more ambiguous. But it won't mean that the same rules won't be followed. They will be followed. It will only be that the appreciation will be more symbolic and less technical. Another thing that Alice said that educated her a lot and captured her attention was that on the end of lab 12 was the 11th of July, which is 11-7, right? 11 is the base of the pyramid and 7 is the top of the pyramid. And that is indicating towards the picking up or the captation of someone who isn't me, because we are talking about something that is in relation to 11. So that was a great convergence. Humanly, for Ale, it is really hard to planify tasks because she's always required for a logic of another dimension. So for Ale, it's really hard to connect humanly or to fulfill something that she had planned. Well, after the event and after she came back to the physicality, right? Because she said that she said to us in the 7011 group that she is finding herself coming out of the pandemic now. For her, the virtuality ended and the physicality began. So she had to learn many things and many management of things that she had been unaccustomed to completely because of the virtuality and the pandemic and such. Or the, not the pandemic, but like the virtuality. Now we're coming back to the physicality. So we're finding a lot of setbacks to perform activities or to add new activities, lateralizations, or working with other people in horizontal. These were things that Ale had forgotten how to do. So now when she says, okay, we are now taking the next step because we have been planifying everything, she says, oh, it is the 11th of the 7th month. And that is when the convergence of synchronizing with someone who isn't me for a lateral task. It is as if the algorithm synchronized that day, the 11th of the 7th, in the captation of someone else who isn't me to be able to work in a coupled way because, of course, the SE cardinality is included because we're talking about the end of lap 12, which is the inclusion of someone else, someone different than me, not my mirror. Because if the other is my mirror, I am using the other as a space of projection of me. So no, the other is not my mirror. If the other is my mirror, is because I am using them as a space of projection, which is the first error that happens in the processor. It is the first thing that happens. It is the first fault and from, that happens from there. So, that's what we are talking about when we're talking about the second lap that has to do with the other. So, being able to map as many not me's. So, the more not me's that I am able to map, the more integrated will our functionality in the entorno will be. So as many not me's that I have mapped, my functionality in the entorno will be better. So, for me to be able to map other not me's, I have to previously create a space. Because if I didn't create a space before, I'm not going to be able to do that. So I'm going to be reactive directly. I'm going to fall into the experience directly if I didn't create a space before. So LGC always has these kinds of surprises, very big and very educational. So now Ale wants to talk a little bit about the events that are going to be happening from now on, because she says that she has a feeling that people have a certain expectation for events that they're going to be as they were before. And they're not going to be like before because the field is demanding other things. And also because Alejandra does not have the same ignorance license that she had before. Because before she was in a moment of training. She was functioning with 3 cardinalities, but the 4th cardinality was free. It was like a free field. So anybody could take the microphone and anybody could ask a question. So that was a training and an opportunity to create situations and to take out of the mute zone explanations that were unprecedented even for Alejandra. But now that's not the case. Now the 4th cardinality is taking a daily exam, and it is very rigid and it is very detailed. And it is demanding that Alejandra's personal evolution is much more adjusted. So, under what perspective will Alejandra be giving the events? There's a lot of changes. The idea is to call the people that have been to previous events so that these people can sense or feel these changes or perceive these changes. And because these changes have to do with more restrictions, because these restrictions tend to provide more containment. So we are not going to be going over new themes. She's not going to develop new themes on the events. But what she will be doing is talk much more clearly about the conceptual basis, and also she wants to know where the construction of concepts of the people of LGC are, like where they are. So these regulations make it so that she doesn't lose the reins or the wheel of the event. So it's going to be slowly, it's going to be gradual, step by step, not new things, but it is going to be about just organizing what has already been provided, which is a lot already. And she cannot just allow anybody to take the microphone and make a question because everybody's in a different place. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a common basis. All of the concepts go to the base, and they're going to be explained as if they were for children in the lowest frequency possible. So why? Because now she starts talking about something, and she says, our origin is digital. And because it is a digital origin, it has a lot to do with occurrences and imagination. And what is the thing with occurrences and imagination? There is no margin there. There's no restriction. So our digital origin has the absolute as a natural. Our digital origin takes the absolute and has the absolute as something completely natural. But when we go towards the matter, the filters begin, the restrictions and the regulations begin. Because existence is opposite to what we have in the antimatter. In existence, it is more free whether more regulation it has. So if it has more regulation, it is more free when we're talking about matter. It is the opposite logic. So it is difficult for us to draw the concept of that because we have an instance that is completely free and another instance that is completely regulated. But because they are both different, they are different spaces from the same axis, we find the content and the container, and then we begin with this double membrane where they can see each other, they can be familiarized with each other, and they do not scare each other. So the cold perspective and the warm and the hot perspective begin to coexist in the unified field. So getting to know all of these mechanisms is very passionate, and all of this depends on whether or not the basic concepts are well created, properly created.
Progress.
So the physical event is with the purpose of creating or working on the basic concepts in a more proper way. So she wanted to clarify this because people sometimes imagine all kinds of things that have nothing to do with what is actually going to be. So physical events will always be, another thing is that they will always be starting from lab 11, because we will always be leaving a space for the beginning of in the beginning of the year to create stability. Okay. So slowly we're going to become more and more familiarized with the unified field, with all these concepts that we talk about theoretically, but not actually, it's not actually theoretically. Theoretically for the one that listens, but for Alejandra, these things are descriptions. they are not theoretical for her, because she says that she would never be able to make such fabulous theories. She's not as brilliant. And the quality of these descriptions improves as the digital era begins to be installed. So every day there are updates. She routes the same concepts daily, and that's why she can notice the continuous evolution. It's very subtle, but she can see it. So when we are routing basic concepts, she says, I do not take them out of any kind of memory. She always pulls them out of the antenna, because the greater security that she has is in the antimatter, not in the matter. So the one that does not have this connection imagines that she does whatever thing, like people can imagine any kind of thing that Alejandra does or how she does it. But the reality is that Alejandra, the person, is the last one that realizes things, same as everybody else, right? It is just that the road becomes more transparent, and because it is more transparent, a neurology can be created that is able to describe what is happening. So the thing is that another announcement is that the event for August is still open. This is the contact for it, and only the people that have been to previous event physically can go to this. So it is open, and it is very important that the connection for this is resonance, because resonance is not contagious. It is an appetite of the creator of meaning. Because if there is resonance, the creator of meaning is calling the door. The creator of meaning is not the consumer of meaning, because there we are talking about the human that asks, that is constantly asking, like, what is the meaning of this, or what is the meaning of that? Well, we have to turn on the light to the creator of meaning, and for that we have the space temporal structures, which are these signals that light up the tasks of the creator of meaning. Because when that axis grows, the re-axis grows, the details grow. My subtle perception grows. So that is a little bit of like the idea and the leitmotif of all of this. So she wanted to share that so all of this is very characteristic of this era, of this time, and that these 8 years from 2017 and Calendaria, in relation to new content, because 2024 and 2023 were very demanding content-wise. So we're that's why Ali's like, okay, we're not gonna be doing new or offering new content. We're just gonna be working on what has already been provided. So these tasks of all the things that happened 2023, 2024 are the tasks that depressurize conflicts. Because if conflicts are treated linearly, they will blow up. And if they don't blow up from inside, they blow up outside. If I don't become infected inside, they will infect the field. Therefore, it is like throwing seed, so that in a new cycle, the same conflicts and bigger conflicts come back again, because these conflicts are going to be like bigger because of the digital era. So, if I don't get infected, I infect the field, and then the conflicts come back in the cycle. But if we are working in the antimatter, the opposite happens. We're going to be depressurizing conflicts that are active, providing different conceptual spaces of treatment. So this is how the oxygen comes in through many other layers prior to human communication. And this regulation of the human communication begins to have more air. But this is an internal perception. The one outside is not going to know how it is that we are being so neutral in front of things that others suddenly execute reactives, and this is why they are not providing treatment to different layers simultaneously. So we are not talking about this putting an etiquette to things or from the place of a cliche. We're talking about this from multi-dimension, from the multi-dimensional perspective. So if the reactives are being executed, then the different layers with different logics are not being managed with the proper like in an appropriate way. So we are moving without a rush, but without stopping. We are moving forward, and this year is developing itself slowly. So on the day this program was recorded, they were under column 28 of Toganeson, and the black spaces are ending when the event is happening, right? So the last of the black spaces in the periodic table, we're talking about 224. So these last spaces are going to be being transited when event 72 is happening. So the last spaces in black are the configurations that are going to provide a determination to the interpreter. Why? Let's show 1 second. I'm going to open the periodic table so we can see. So she's talking about these last 4 spaces in black: 2021, 2022, 2020, not 20, sorry, 221, 222, 223, 224. So this is I believe it is August 11th, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But this last space in black is right on top of 57, which is LA. And we know that LA is the interpreter, right? So that's what she's talking about. So she's saying the last spaces in black are the configurations that are going to give a determination to the interpreter, because that interpreter is going to be updated in an agenda that has been worked on in the antimatter that is later going to be expressed materially. Why is she saying agenda? It is an interpreter that is going to be updated in an agenda that has already been worked on in the antimatter, because the black spaces are 106, and we know that 1 with 6 is the agenda, right? So we have 118 elements plus these 106 spaces, and that's where we have 224, right? So there we have everybody with the circuits conciliated between matter and antimatter. Everybody has their circuits conciliated between matter and antimatter. So what is all of this for, or why? Because the solar code is colonizing the unified field. If it doesn't do that, all of this becomes very unstable, very ugly. It becomes ugly. But if the solar code colonizes the unified field, all of this becomes very stable, because we're talking about subatomic field. So everything that happens from day 2025 and on will be an accommodation that's going to be extremely dynamic. And because we have this configuration of 224 prior, right? That's what's going to keep us stable. So we're going to be very stable in the middle of the axis, on the top and on the bottom. So the changes are going to happen, but the comprehensions that are going to be expanding, they're going to be doing so at such speeds that we've never seen before. So this is a titanic task, because all of this is depending on the structure of calendar of 2017. So doing all of this in anticipation is precisely Alejandra's commitment. The thing is that the personal resources are the most limited resources we have. So those being the most limited resources we have, we need selective filters to be able to apply them. So if my personal resources are limited, well, she's talking about herself, right? Her personal resources are limited. She will only focus her interaction, because it's much shorter, much limited, to the people that resonated early in LGC. So the reins are shorter. She has limited resources personally. But the people that resonated later shouldn't be worried, because that's what the people from the community are there for. These people are being trained to provide an answer, to be able to provide a proposal for other people that are not in this category, because the people from the community also need to be developed. They also need to generate this muscle, right? So the only thing is that we're talking about the chapters of LGC, and we shouldn't be surprised that every chapter has its own thing, because LGC from day one, in LGC, every stage, every chapter brought something new. And the thing is that LGC is very easy to distort, right? It's very easy to confuse. So LGC is very volatile, and with that volatility, it is very easy to go anywhere with these concepts, because these are concepts that have no references. So logically, anybody can create their own development, but they shouldn't expect Alejandra to follow it, right? Like, people have to know that Alejandra cannot follow other people's developments in this specific in LGC, of course. In the community, everybody knows that, right? And also she's clarifying that she has a frequential intolerance to graphics or images that other people make in relation to these resources. She just cannot look at them, because if she looks at an image that is not properly anticipated and routed in abstraction, that provides a lot of disturbance for her. She does not have the licenses to work with images. Her processor does not work with images. It is constructing all the time graphics that are abstract, but she is argumenting them abstractly before, right? And it has taken her a long time to generate images, because these images that she makes are all abstract configurations. So like in the case of the musical notes graph, it took her many years to do that. So this is not a theory, because if it was a theory, she would have all of these concepts from the beginning. And it is not the case, because these concepts have been formed very slowly. So later, it happens that years go by, and she says that she just cannot understand how the cardinalities appeared in event 31. Like, she says there is no way that she can explain to herself how she went 30 events without the cardinalities, because it was in event 31 where the cardinalities appeared. And now it is something that is very common, but she just doesn't understand how she did 30 events without the cardinalities. But that's the thing. When everything began, things were very slow and very step by step. And later, like, we didn't know what came after that. So if all of these things are interpreted quickly, they will surely be distorted. So it is not easy to interpret Alejandra, because she has these things, these types of things, right? She explained, like with the images. She is under an Andromedan instruction of a subatomic scale. So how can she compare herself anatomically with the person in the human society? It is impossible, because there are light years of difference. These are truly majestic things. So these are things that are like the subtleties of the development. They are very slow achievements, very, very slow. But these achievements are talking about determinations in the antimatter that are being uh that are being put or manifested in the container. And when the container habilitates these things or makes them active, is because they are integrated with the rest of reality. That is why it's not going to be fast, because she is entering under the parametrization of the whole unified field. So, she was in Peru in January for several, like a lot of days, and that had to do with her receiving an education that she is now managing, and that is allowing her to take these steps, and to take these steps now and not before. Okay, so moving to another thing that she said is that we are special at origin and common in the destiny. Um, Special in the origin means that it is not based on a memory, it is based on an antenna. So, if our neurology ends up separating us from the antenna, then we have this issue, this persecution of me wanting to feel special. I want to feel special. I want to feel special. Why is that? It's because the neurology blocked all the frequencies that are hyper subtle, which is where specialty is. Geniality is there in the hyper subtle frequencies, and it has always been there, but it is subtle. So if the references have become neurological and anatomic, that's another frequency. So we're not going to be able to access what is special. We're going to be looking for what is special. But special, we're never going to be special. So the thing is that if we are special in origin, what are we going to be going after? We're going to be after what's common. We're going to be going and looking for the conquest of the community. Community, unified field. But our origin is not there. Our destiny is there, our destination is there. Why? Because our origin is special. Why is it special? Because it's unique. Because occurrence and imagination have no lateralization. It only has verticality. It can only be vertical. And that's what the antenna does, which is separated from the source. That's why we have the V. The V is 23. Why is the V like that? Because that is the condition it has to be able to pick up something, to captate something. So that dependency from the source will not be cut out. The thing is that if we are in these neurological confusions, that is a frequency that is completely different to the subtle frequency, right? So common is when I am able to communicate, and to communicate is to use laterality. I am not going to be able to use laterality if I do not accept community first. Because special, I have always been special. I am sorry that society says otherwise, because we are all special. Every time that we laugh or we cry, the other person sees us cry or sees us laugh. But the other person will never know why we are laughing and crying, because they are not inside us. And we should know this very well. We should not confuse this, because if we confuse this, we are burdening to the other person the task of guessing why I'm crying or guessing why I am laughing. But the other person has no responsibility to guess anything. Okay, so all of these things are very important for these space-temporal education, because the internal access, I am the only one that inhabits that. I am the only one that inhabits that internal access. It is a special registration and it's unique. So even when I do my best attempts to be able to communicate, I am going to be communicating from my own parameters. So if I know these things, if we assume these things, we begin to create common parameters. And after we communicate, and afterwards, after we create common parameters, we're going to be able to communicate through those common parameters. But it is not that we're going to be able to lose the special ones to connect with the common ones, okay? We never have to lose the special quality. So the common parameters are for communicating, the special parameters are for amplifying. So every time there's an amplification on the mute zone, okay? The amplification never happens in the community, okay? Because if it's in relation to that, it's going to be forced. When we are talking about amplification, it is something that is fluid, and it's incrementing connection. And the first thing that this amplification is going to have an impact on is the mute zone. So the more time I am in the mute zone, the more internal membranes I create. Okay, so and then these internal membranes see the other one that is not me, searches for points of contact, and then begin a communication. Okay, that communication is going to be a fractal, but it will not be a replica of what actually happened to you. It's going to be a fractal of what actually happened to you. Because when we are fractalizing, when we are lateralizing whatever we're trying to communicate, whatever happened to us, it loses quality when it's being created, when we're trying to communicate. So this is something that Alice says that happens to her constantly, is that when she's communicating what she knows about LGC, it loses quality to what she's receiving. That is why she has a chance of improving the way she explains it constantly. Okay? When we are fractalizing, it loses quality because we're never going to be able to communicate exactly what is in our read axis. So, this is something that we have to know. When these fractalizations are materialized, they lose quality, and they lose quality, and they gain they lose some qualities and they gain other qualities. There are qualities that are lost and other qualities that are gained, and they are of different ranges. So what happens to what was before? Yeah, I don't get rid of that because it connects me with the construction of meaning, which is what I inhabit when I laugh, when I cry, when I move, when I do anything. But whatever I am issuing will always be a mystery. Every single one of us is a mystery. So what are we going to do in the community? We're going to create ministries to be able to communicate between mysteries. This is beautiful because we're going to be able to assume a specialty in the antimatter and a community in the matter. So assuming ourselves as a mystery, I don't have to go out into the world so that someone puts an etiquette on me as special. Someone telling me that I am special, right? Because if someone doesn't call me special, I'm gonna feel common. This is a joke. She says that the cosmic interferences are laughing at us because we believe this, because it's all backwards, because we are special in origin and common in destiny. And the fact that we're common in destiny is the most special thing that can be achieved, which is community, respecting our mysteries and creating ministries. This is a beautiful thing. We don't have to break connection with the source. It is only about not confusing things, not blocking the flow of signals. So it is very beautiful. And she says, Alice says that she thinks that what is in front of us is very beautiful, and that she has a lot of faith. Fe, which is 6-5, right? She says, we're going to use the 65 inside 44, which is global quarantine 4564 of the date this was recorded. She says, we're going to use faith. We're going to use fe. She says, I have a lot of faith, but please, she's talking about an administrated collective memory, 5-6, right? Inside 44, inside all of the destinies. So That's why we have 4, 5, 6, the design of the truth, because each one will have their own mystery. It is the design of the truth that each one has and that we are trying to communicate in the community. This is very beautiful. Okay. Okay, on to the next step. She's talking about the memory of that field, of that unified field, saves a print of that digital origin, which is special, right? That special digital origin is, there's a print of that being kept in the memory of the unified field. This is what we called DO. DO is our document that has an imprint of the digital origin, DO, digital origin. So it is the field that has to take the signals and then follow that digital origin to provide us connection, connectivity, and read connectivity. Okay, so digital origin. The perspective of the document, it's an anatomic perspective. So the digital origin is when the field takes that to provide me with the flow of signals. So I captate, I receive, I pick up those signals, then I am elaborating my gravitational document, and then I am assigning the all of the history of everything that happened in this unit of memory, which is Earth. Another thing that happened on the day of the recording was that these many days have passed from the removal of the gold standard, the 15th of August of 1971, which is 19690 days from the removal of the gold standard. So right now she's saying, Alejandra says that this is extraordinary, and she says, I think that we are in front of the most extraordinary moment that has ever existed. Another thing that she said that it was like a really good sign that happened in Argentina was that in the last cardinality of Lab 12, the senators in Argentina approve of a law that focuses on the people with disabilities. So the signal that Alejandra reads, because her task is to see the space-temporal structures, is the inclusion of the other in the field. So she thinks that it's really convergent with the infrastructure that some members of the community say, let's put this issue in the let's put this issue in the spotlight. Let's put someone else in the spotlight, someone else that isn't me, someone that has a competitive disadvantage with, a disability, so that we can create and lateralize a resource. So she says this is really good because existence itself is subsidized. And structurally, this thing of creating a new resource for someone that has a disadvantage has to do with a sort of like subsidizing in this interdimensional scale. Why? Because it's happening in a very specific moment, which is the fourth cardinality of Lab 12. And this is about someone else who isn't me, who is different than me, who has a disadvantage, and that this disadvantage needs to be compensated by the system. It may be that later we go into linearity and the resource that is created is not providing satisfaction as the human would want it. Okay, like maybe the senator said something and then the expectations were too high, and then the way that the resource is created is not very satisfactory. But she says this doesn't like this is a calling from another level. Like this is still a good sign. Like after we see the human intentions, maybe the human intentions were others, right? But she's not talking about that. Because many times defects take us through the route of the creation of the controls to be able to modulate that defect. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Sometimes defects drive us towards the creation of the controls to be able to modulate those defects. And then later, I am able to construct a virtue. So what is a virtue? It is a modulated defect. The thing is that the only thing that defects are lacking are creation of frames. Okay? So creating frames to be able to provide satisfaction to these demands. So this is what's going to pull our capacities that we don't know we have in the beginning. We only know we have these capacities because there's a demand that pulls from us. So then later we can create the frames that compensate them. So to be able to create these frames, what is the only thing that is missing? Is that this advantage needs to be provided for, like needs to be considered. So we're gonna see how the conditions are generated for that to happen. I am not demanding someone else for anything. No, because if it is me, like if something occurred to me, then I have the responsibility to create the frame to be able to support whatever has occurred to me. I am not supposed to throw someone else the task of creating the frame of something that occurred to me. So this is important, right? But the fact that I am including a receiver of a lower velocity is really good because this opens a credit line at other levels precisely because of this frequential tie. She says that it's a frequential tie, and the fact that we are including receivers of lower velocities is opening up a new line of credit. That's why she talks about the subsidizing, okay? So in this lab 12, the fourth corner, like a better lab 12 and the fourth cardinality is impossible for it to be better. Even if humans are of the lowest quality, it doesn't matter because that is the margin of error that is inhabiting, and therefore that is the frequency it has to modulate it. Like that is the frequency that needs to be modulated. So there we are transiting, we're completing this agenda. We are being in charge of processing in the antimatter these issues so that later, starting from lab 15, all of these changes start to express and very quickly. But when these changes are happening, we are very, very stable. And precisely why? Because we have anticipated these frames, because lab 8 on the table has been appropriated so that the native octave is developed and so that it doesn't generate frictions of self-destruction in the field. There will be attempts for idiots making attempts so that the global community enters into a war. But people do not want to go to war. Every time each person, like every day goes by and everybody wants to have more friends from more countries. So people do not confuse like these people that think they're leaders shouldn't be confusing a space of therapy with these leadership situations, global leadership situations. So Alejandra says like she thinks that there is not much more credit left for these 4 or 5 clowns that want to take us to war. Okay, another thing is that we should remember that the living state is one of the 4 states of love, which is saints, dead, living, and awake. These are 4 channels. So maybe I am awake, but I am not alive. Maybe I am alive, but I am not awake. The dead state has to do with the management of the foundation. So if I enter into a conflict with the foundation, that shouldn't be happening if I am working in the antimatter. If I am entering into a conflict with the foundation, then the falle en el cimiento happens. Fallecimiento is death, right, in Spanish. But you see the word fallecimiento, foundation. I failed in the foundation. That happens if I have a conflict with the foundation, right? But falle, the word falle has A-L-L, LLA credentials, right? That when they impact the foundation and they are not modulated in the antimatter, okay, I unlink myself from the foundation and I continue to work in the antimatter, which is death, right? The thing is that is one of the 4 states, United States of love. And it doesn't mean that if someone is not here, they are not a part of this, okay? So, another thing that she says, and she has said it before, is that the aureola of a saint, you know, the thing they have in their head, is as if it mimics the orbital. And what is an orbital? It is the solar unity. In a solar sense, it is as if it was like a simultaneous situation of all the positions. That's what the orbital is. Simultaneous of a simultaneous situation of all the positions of a solar unity. So this is a subatomic scale in itself, the subatomic scale. Simultaneous, I can't say that word, but a simultaneous situation in all the positions. This is the most common thing there is. It is not special because we're talking about the subatomic scale. For the subatomic scale, this is like water. It is the most normal thing. Simultaneity. Yes, something like that. So being simultaneous, that's something very natural for the subatomic scale. But if we lose that concept loses us. And then we go towards a search that is distorted in a frequency that doesn't correspond to what we're searching for. So the qualities that have the frequency that is like genuinely there has that, like that's the subatomic scale. The frequency that has those qualities genuinely is the subatomic scale. So from that perspective, every particle is a saint because it is a part of the primary unfoldment and it is part of the source. That's it, right? So another state, which is the dead state, turns on the foundation. That's why it's dead. So from the foundation, it nourishes the living. And what it provides the living is qualities and the living provides qualities for the container, and that is to be awake. Because definitely, we know that time for space is a quality. And from that perspective, that's where we find the awake, right? So this is a short explanation of the four states of love. 4 United States of love, sorry. So we have 4 channels. Each channel fulfills a specific role. And any way that we find to kind of like eliminate conflicts that we have and any of these channels is very welcome. So yeah, we got through it. 13 pages. I think it was quite well. All right, you guys. I hope it is helpful for you. I hope I didn't go too fast. I think I went a little fast in some places, but I think it's gonna be great for you guys. Okay, see you soon. Bye-bye.